Completed in 2059, designed by the Boskali Self-Defense Air Force, with a weight of almost 9 tons and a top speed of 360 km per hour, the SAH-46 Chicane stealth attack helicopter is a fire-tested combat machine ready to take on the challenges of nuclear confrontation. Hello pilots! Today I have the great honor of introducing you to the SAH-46 Chicane stealth attack helicopter, or simply the Chicane. I stand here in complete darkness before dawn as there is much to discuss. For me, the Chicane is pure flying pleasure and a mobile weapon platform that can combat almost anything. Although it was initially difficult for me to control the Chicane, I do not regret any of the many hours I invested to master its controls. In this video, I want to provide an overview of the Chicane's features and then offer some tips on handling it. Let's start with the armament of the Chicane. It features a 30mm rotary cannon with 750 HE rounds. The cannon has a maximum range of 2 km and also deals moderate damage to buildings. Inside, it can carry 8 AGM-48 missiles. These use an optical sensor to find their targets. With a range of 8 km and an explosive power of 9 kg TNT, they can also engage medium-sized targets from a safe distance. Additionally, lofting maneuvers are possible if the enemies have been previously reconnoitered. On the inner pylons of its stubs, a Chicane pilot can choose from the widest variety of weapons. Basically, the Chicane is equipped with AGR-18 linchpins on these pylons, as they are very effective against light targets and are excellent for saturating targets. However, it is also possible to carry another 8 AGM-48 or even 4 of the larger AGM-68s. These can be fired at tanks from a great distance and usually result in a secure kill. Since they cause more damage than the AGM-48s, they can also be useful for sinking ships. Then there is the option to choose 6 IRM-S1, which can engage air targets based on their heat signature at a distance of 5 km. And lastly, there is the mounting of 25mm flex mount gun pods. These each have 250 rounds and are therefore quickly depleted. However, they also offer considerable firepower. The selection is smaller on the outer pylons. In addition to another 4 AGM-48s, it is possible to choose between 4 IRM-S1 or 2 MMR-S3s. The MMR-S3s have a greater range of 15 km compared to the S1s and a greater explosive power of 11 kg TNT compared to the 3 kg TNT of an S1. I usually fly with the 8 AGM-48s inside, 42 linchpins on the inner pylons and 4 IRM-S1 on the outer pylons. As typical for helicopters, the Chicane is also capable of vertical takeoff and landing. Due to the wheels on its landing gear, it can also roll on the ground, which initially helped me a lot in landing the Chicane. I would now like to take a small tour over Felsbari International Airport and go over some basics. Unlike a jet, you do not control the power of the engine with the throttle, but rather change the pitch of the individual rotor blades. This is an exciting topic and there are many good videos about it. I will try to break it down for the game. Increasing the throttle in the game makes the pitch of the rotor blades deeper. This generates more lift. The steeper they are, the more the engine has to work. If you set them too steep, usually over 86 to 90%, it can lead to an overload of the engine and the RPM drops. However, I could not determine that the engine takes damage over time due to overload or generates less lift. The collective plays a major role in controlling the chicane and must be adjusted very frequently to the situation. The chicane does not accelerate in the direction its nose is pointing. Instead, it always tries to push itself upwards along its vertical axis. If you reduce the collective, gravity will eventually take full control. In the HUD, a green circle with 3 protruding lines always indicates the direction in which the chicane is currently moving. Due to the air cushion it creates, which allows it to hover, it can orient itself in a different direction than the current movement, which can be helpful when targeting and engaging enemies. A good exercise at the beginning of a pilot's career is to fly controlled turns. It is important to ensure that the green circle is at the level of the horizon. I use this technique very often to turn away after attacks on ships or other targets close to the ground or water to escape enemy fire. By pushing the nose of the helicopter down, the chicane accelerates forward. If you overdo it, it loses altitude but continues to gain speed. If you catch the descent early enough, you can accelerate forward quickly, provided you have enough altitude at the start. Many pilots have informed me that they have trouble slowing down the chicane in the air. A moderate method for this is a simple loop. It is very easy to control and works as follows. With a collective of around 80%, you pull the nose of the helicopter up. Once it reaches a climb rate of 10, 12 or more km per hour, you stay in the rotation but reduce the collective to 0%. Only after the loop is completed do you increase the collective again. This way, a lot of speed can be reduced in a small space. Flying close to the ground or water is often of great importance to avoid detection by the enemy. Therefore, it is worth practicing this type of flight repeatedly to become proficient at it. Although the radar system was recently changed and now works somewhat differently, the rule of thumb for me remains: flying low is safer. When approaching for landing, I usually fly past my desired landing position first to get an overview of the situation. Then I perform a J-turn to quickly slow down the helicopter and position myself for alignment. For a quick landing, it is advantageous to approach the landing site as low as possible. However, a lower flight altitude also offers less room for maneuvering and thus for error correction. Once the speed is low enough, the goal is to bring the helicopter to its target. To do this, I make many small adjustments to the collective and try to keep the helicopter steady and aligned with the landing position. Here, the green dot helps me again to recognize in which direction the helicopter is currently hovering, so that I can react accordingly. If the current situation allows, it is not a shame to take your time for landing approaches. At least if you aim to bring the chicane home in one piece. When the landing gear is extended, the image of the landing camera is displayed. There is also a small circle, this time in white, indicating the direction of movement. With some practice, I was able to make use of this camera view. Besides the tarantula, the chicane is also capable of rescuing fallen pilots. To do this, it must get close to them, make contact with the ground or water and move at less than 2 km per hour. Ideally, it should not move at all. Rescuing pilots helps to increase your rank during an ongoing game, earn points and make money. Sometimes when I join a game that has been running for a while, I use the chicane as a rescue helicopter. This usually improves my situation and I don't have to chase everything. Since pilots don't always land on even ground, challenging landing maneuvers are sometimes required, which is what I find most exciting about the whole thing. Landing pilots in water poses no problem for the rescue. On contrary, I now find rescues from water even easier than on land. The Chicane is more or less able to float. Of course, it is supported by its rotor, but it does not sink like a stone upon contact with water. Since contact with water quickly slows down the Chicane without damaging it, it is easy to take the fallen pilots on board. If you hit the water surface at high speed or at a steep angle, it often ends badly for the rescuer. Sometimes I focus the camera on a target to maintain orientation. With some practice, I was then able to control the Chicane despite the different perspective. If you don't always want to take a lot of time to slow down, you can try a quick water landing. As you can see, it leads to a very rapid loss of speed without causing damage. Fallen pilots on land are sometimes very easy to see. For example, if they are standing next to the crashed, still burning wreckage of their plane. If you are lucky enough that no trees block your view, it is easy to pick up the guys. Trees don't have a hitbox, which means you can fly through them without any problems, but they do block the view. As already mentioned, some rescue missions can prove to be difficult. The terrain usually does not provide a starting point for a simple landing. However, the Chicane can be controlled so precisely that there is always a way. Very difficult to impossible, however, are surfaces that are too steep. The Chicane's brakes are then not sufficient to hold it at one point. It is then necessary to find a new landing point to avoid leaving the guys behind. I have built a small mission to demonstrate an attack pattern that I regularly use. In this mission you start from a Dynamo class destroyer which will also join the action later. My targets are behind a small hill, so the destroyer does not have a direct line of sight to the targets. Since the targets are not yet identified, it is important to proceed with caution. I really like the nearby mountain. It offers a good view and many positions that provide cover. Before I can open fire on the enemies, I need to reveal them, so I cautiously approach the edge of the mountain and peek slightly over it. Once I have identified targets, I need to dive back down to avoid incoming fire. The enemy will immediately open fire as soon as their weapon systems are aligned. Back in cover, I need to wait until the enemy fire hits the mountain or flies over my head. The now revealed targets can be marked from safe cover, allowing the attack to commence. I first try a lofting maneuver. In this maneuver, I fire AGM-48s over the edge of the mountain. Although the missiles do not have a direct line of sight to the target when fired, they are constantly searching for it. The firing direction leads them over the edge, allowing them to get a line of sight to the target and then turn towards it. In the second attack, I drop flares before I am under fire. This makes it harder for the enemy to target me. This gives me a slightly extended time window to make my shots. This time I use linchpins, as they saturate targets with their large number. Even if some of them are shot down on the way, enough reach their target to cause significant damage. Diving repeatedly is a good method to keep safe from the intended targets. But in a real game there are also jets in the air. They like to target hovering chicanes. They can perform a direct dive attack using their onboard cannon or missiles. The missiles are then so fast and fired at close range that evading is almost impossible. It even goes so far that jet pilots effectively use their bombs against the slowly or not at all moving chicane. Bombs also have a decent guidance system and a large impact area. After neutralizing the visible ground targets nearby with the linchpins, I proceeded to take the corvette near the coast under fire. I used all my remaining AGM-48s and linchpins to saturate the target. A single corvette is not capable of defending against this onslaught of missiles. The AGM-48 fired by the corvette is not agile enough to hit me as long as I fly fast enough. After I have expended my ammunition, I make my way back to the destroyer to resupply with weapons. Meanwhile, quite some time has passed and the destroyer is about to fire its cruise missiles. These are SAH-46, which have a range of 250 kilometers and a destructive power of 300 kg TNT. For me, there was only the rest to clean up and finish the mission. If you have made it this far into the video, I thank you very much for your attention. I hope I was able to provide a decent overview of the chicane. There are several other videos on my channel, most of which deal with the chicane. All the liveries used in the video were created by Mooneri. I will include links to his creations in the video description. Thanks for watching and fly safe.